Hello and welcome to Veterans on the Front Porch. I'm your host, Clint Brown, and I have a very special guest with me today, Bob DeMario. Bob, welcome.
Nice to be here.
So tell me, you're an Air Force veteran.
Right.
When did you join the Air Force?
I joined the Air Force October 31st, 1968. I flew down to basic training.
Okay.
Halloween night. That's why it has special significance to me.
Halloween night?
Halloween night. Actual Halloween night we flew down.
Wow. What prompted you to pick the Air Force?
Well, I decided to pick the Air Force because at the time I was a young man and the Vietnam War was going on. I was a little nervous about that. And so I picked the Air Force instead of the Army. I came within 1 week of going into the Army.
Wow.
Yeah, and I would have been sent over to Fort Gordon, and they shipped people out from there to Vietnam.
Yeah.
You know, so.
So you went to, where was basic training?
Basic training was at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, just outside of San Antonio.
Okay, and you went from New England to Texas?
No, at that time I lived in New York. At that
Okay.
time, that was long before I met my wife. We didn't come up to New Hampshire until 1994.
Oh, okay.
So that was a long time. It was right after art school I was drafted.
Oh, all right.
So.
And what did you do in the Air Force?
I was an artist for the Air Force. I was lucky enough I took a bypass specialist test in basic training, and I passed that with no problems, and they had me decide to out because of manpower needs. They had me be an artist for the Air Force. It's the Illustrated Career Field. It's called 22351. I still remember the numbers.
Wow.
And so I was an artist for the whole time for 4 years in the Air Force, stationed in different places.
Well, that seemed like good duty.
It was good duty. It was exciting, as a young man to be able to have the adventure of being in the service and still being safe at the same time.
What kind of things did you work with in the art?
Well, I did mostly charts and posters, information charts. And in those days, it was very old-fashioned. They had to be done with a Leroy lettering pen. And you had to put the pen on a template and trace the letters on the top of the where it was supposed to go with the lines already drawn in there. And you couldn't make a mistake because if you did, the ink would dribble off the little holder, a little tiny holder like that. And I got really good at it. And when you trace the letters, then it comes on top on the template. And I had to space them out and everything. And I got to be pretty fast at that, believe it or not.
Now, you told me a story, because we're both in the American Legion here in Wolfeboro.
Right.
You told me a story about doing a map on the wall.
I did a map on the chow hall and mess hall wall at RAF Bentwaters, and I was commissioned by the base to do that. I took time off from my regular charts and posters to do this map, and I had to project it on the wall 35 feet long by 12 feet high. And I had to stand on a ladder that was at least 15 feet high, 12 to 15 feet high, to reach all the different areas. And one wrong step, and it's a long way down, baby, as they say.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to paint it in red, white, and blue. They wanted the American colors. They wanted Puerto Rico at that time was a state, and Alaska. So they wanted all of them in different colors, but red, white, and blue. But I had to put those on Puerto Rico on the side and Alaska at the top. You know what it was. And it was a challenge figuring out the colors, but to project it up 35 feet long by a little map like this, and a little picture like this, and projected the outlines, then trace the outlines first, then paint each one in with a brush, and I had to change the brushes for the different colors and the big cans of paint on the side of the step ladder where you had to dip the paint, and one wrong move, it wouldn't have been good, that's for sure.
And how long did it take you to do that?
That took me about 2 weeks to do.
2 weeks?
Every day for 2 weeks. I worked so many hours a day on it. And I had to get up and down because you had to change colors, so
Right.
I'd do all the red first and alternate them, and then the blue, red, white, and blue, and all of that. And it was very challenging to do.
I'll bet it was.
And I was supposed to get a lot of recognition for that, but it didn't come about, but they loved it and everything. I did get a little write-up in the base newspaper, but I was supposed to be photographed shaking hands with the base commander and getting a little certificate of achievement award for doing the map and all of that type of thing.
Oh.
But it was very challenging.
I'll bet it was. I mean,
And it had to be nice and neat. The colors had to be nice and flat, and they had to be hard edged and meet each other. So there was a clean line between one state and another state, with the colors.
and doing it while you're balancing yourself on a ladder.
Right. And then I heard that I left RAF Bentwaters in 1972, just honorable discharge. And I heard that somebody told me that stayed there for many years afterwards, that map was up for close to 25, 30 years before they painted
Really?
over it. That was up for
Wow.
that long. So a lot of guys got to see that, and
A
people
lot of
got to see it.
achievement.
Yeah.
Did you get to sign your name at the end?
I did sign my name at the end of it. I was
Oh,
able to
good.
sign my name.
Excellent. That's great.
So
So an artist in the Air Force,
Right.
that's unusual.
it is unusual because they had manpower needs. They needed charts and posters. Well, I was stationed in Taipei, Taiwan before that, from '68 to the middle of '69, and so they needed charts and posters. And they had a top secret clearance while I was in Taipei, Taiwan, and also in England. RAF Bentwaters had a top secret clearance. And I wasn't too far from. In Taiwan, the graphic shop was a little far away from the airfield, but in England, it was. You could see the planes taking off from where I was, and the planes would have the fire coming out the back, and you could hear the rumble of the engine and all the stuff, and the takeoff. Sometimes the desk used to shake a little bit, stuff like that. So it
That
was
would
fun.
mess you up if you're doing something very intricate.
Right.
to
But
have
I
that-
was able to have a steady hand.
Oh, good.
And the boss I had in the service, I want to mention his name. I don't know if he's still alive. His name is Dave Belsky. He was a technical sergeant, and he called me by my first name, and we had a very good working relationship. And he taught me a lot about self-discipline, and he taught me things that would last me the rest of my life. Because when I do my artwork now, I have to have a lot of discipline to finish it and do a good job, and always do a professional job. He taught me to do the hardest parts first of a chart, and then the easy parts later on.
Ah,
So once you get the hard parts out of the way, then you can finish. Then you can easy parts finish right after that.
okay. So you did mostly charts
Charts
and
and
maps?
posters, information charts and posters. One time I did a disaster preparedness patch, and that was nice to do, something different, very graphic. And the pilot approach patterns, I had to use an airbrush to do that, and it had to look like the plane. I had to plan it out and everything. So I got to keep the airbrush after I left. They let me keep the airbrush.
Oh, good. I know when I was in, there was always someone there who would do like patches of things you could put on your.
Right.
Did
So I
your
did
Air
that.
Force buddies have you do stuff like that?
I
for
did a
them?
couple of patches there, but one of them was, I remembered, was a triangular patch, defense preparedness, or Air Force preparedness. And I never got a copy of that for some reason. I would have liked to, you know.
I bet you would. Yeah.
They had promised me. I wanted to keep all of these from my portfolio after I left, because I knew I was going to go back into the art field when I left, and I wanted to have records of what I did. But it was an experience of a lifetime, you know.
I'll bet it
Going to a
was.
foreign country as a young man, and had never been away from home before, and never been overseas, and so that was quite exciting. I was in Taipei, Taiwan for 15 months, and England for 2 years at RAF Bentwaters.
Wow.
You know.
Now, obviously, you didn't wear a uniform while you were doing all this.
Well, I did have in the summertime I had the 1505s, the light tan uniform with a short sleeve shirt. In the wintertime I wore the jacket, the heavier jacket and the heavier pants and stuff. But at work I was able to take off the jacket and work without the tie on and stuff like that. It was very informal.
So you could work in fatigues.
Yeah. And the 1505s were like fatigues, because that was the in thing in those days.
Uh-huh.
And I had a big desk to work on, so it was great. I mean, I had all the room. I had they provided me with all the things, pictograph pens, different sizes and stuff. And my boss was so easy to work with. I'll never forget him.
That makes it even
Yeah.
better.
He wasn't stuffy like you think some tech sergeants would be. He was a person that spent his life in the Air Force, and when I knew him, he was 40 years old, and so he probably retired eventually. And he was from Michigan someplace, I think. But he was a great guy.
So you've continued your artwork.
I've continued my artwork after that. I got into commercial art when I got back, and I designed T-shirts, greeting cards, contemporary barware, linen products, that type of thing. And then, but it was my dream to get in galleries, and then I gave up commercial art after 15 years, something like that, of doing that. And I got into galleries, and that was one of my main goals, and I was glad I did. And I have my work in different galleries in town.
Well,
So,
that's great to know.
and other places.
Because I was told by Harold that you are one heck of a good artist. He
Right.
says you are amazing.
Yeah. Well, I did the did the Vietnam Wall, a replica of that smaller that has,
Right.
in the base on one of the shelves there. and they did a 9/11 tribute to the people that lost their lives at 9/11.
Wow.
That was showing the buildings, and they were in graphic shapes, and that was in red, white, and blue. You know, and the Vietnam War one, I did it on plaques that looked like the wall itself, and had a plaque of the soldiers that they were not forgotten, the prisoners of war, POWs, and that was on there with the patch and everything like that.
Wow.
And they're still in the Legion Hall now. They're still
I've
there.
seen them, yeah.
Yeah.
They're
So-
very nice.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of time to do something
It
like
does
that.
take a lot of time to do it, but I was willing to do it for Legion. And because of all my artwork I did for Legion Hall that year, they made me a Legionnaire of the Year that year that I did that.
Well, you deserve that, that's for sure.
So, but I didn't do it to become Legionnaire of the
No,
Year.
no.
I did it for,
Just
good
to help
grace,
out.
you know.
And we have our 200th anniversary coming up,
That's right, that's coming up.
so they're probably going to ask you to do something.
I could do something for that.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to do something for that.
Yeah.
You know. But I'm proud of my service work. I'm proud to be an American, and I think this is the best country in the world to live in. I've seen other countries, and there's no substitute for freedom, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
Until everybody's free in the world, none of us are really free.
Right, right. There'll always be
You know.
some of us who have to protect it.
Right.
Yeah. But that's an interesting job that you had in the Air Force.
I was lucky to do that for 4 years. One of the guys in basic training, they would train people to do different things. He was a lawyer, and he wanted to be a lawyer for the Air Force, and they made him a cook because of manpower's needs. And he was a very good lawyer in civilian life. So I met people in different walks of life, and I was very lucky to get to be an artist for the Air Force.
Yeah,
Graphic illustrator.
usually it's like a dream sheet when you want to be something, and they'll say, well, we'll make you a cook, or we'll
Right.
make you do this. Or
Right,
we'll,
yeah. That happened to a lot of guys, so I was very lucky. And I worked for good people when I was in Taipei, Taiwan. My sergeant there was very good. He was very down to earth also. He invited me over to his place for cookouts during the nice weather and summertime all year round, things like that.
Wow, that's great.
And, so I was very lucky. I had good people to work with. I haven't forgotten them. You know.
Yeah. Do you keep in touch with anybody?
I wish I had. I was so anxious to get home. I was so homesick after 4 years in the Air Force, even traveling through Europe and stuff like that, that I meant to keep in touch with them, but I didn't. And we had a good relationship even when we left and everything. But it's like, when you're a young man, you're homesick and you want to get home. And so I should have kept in touch, but they're in my heart anyway.
I feel the same way. Like you said, you have good relationships, and you're young, you want to get home.
Right.
And time just goes by so fast that...
It did go by so fast. But it was the adventure of a lifetime being in the Air Force. My brother before me was in the Air Force, and he encouraged me to go in the Air Force. He knew I was going to be drafted. He said, you should go in the Air Force. It'll be a lot safer.
So within 1 week, your draft notice had come?
Well, it came a month ahead of time, and I had like a couple of weeks to 3 or 4 weeks to decide where I wanted to go in. And whether he said, you don't have to go in the Army. He said, you can pick the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines,
Right.
Like that. And so I picked the Air Force. And it was a good decision because it made it quite a difference.
Now, if I remember, I ran into Air Force guys in Chicago after basic training, and they said their uniforms were dry cleaned for them in basic.
Yeah, we had a dry cleaning place there too, and you could tell them when you had the green fatigues on how much starch to put in. And it was very inexpensive in those days, or you have your jacket pressed, your formal blues or your 1505s, and they always looked clean and pressed and everything. I was very sharp in those days. I was always ahead of the time. I was in the best shape of my life when I was in the Air Force too. I was 165 pounds when I left. I'll never weigh that again.
I almost got into an altercation with the guy I went in the Navy with because I said, one more block we could have joined the Air Force.
That's right.
We had to
Exactly.
hand wash our uniforms.
Yeah.
So it was, when I heard you guys got your stuff dry cleaned, I looked at him and said, dry cleaned.
Yeah, and very inexpensive too. I mean, hardly anything.
Yeah.
So because you were in the Air Force and you made a commitment there, so they gave you a break on that.
So an artist in the Air Force, I don't think I've ever met anyone that had that MOS.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, I was very lucky, and I enjoyed it. But the main thing is, I had to be away from home for 4 years. I served my time, but I got so much discipline that it carried over for many years into civilian life. And my boss said that's why he was giving me all that discipline, how to be disciplined to do your work when you had to, and to have a positive attitude, One time when it was slow, I was able to be in the Air Force. They had a flight simulator there, and I learned how to fly with the flight simulator. I always crashed the plane. But luckily that didn't happen in real life, otherwise I wouldn't be here.
Right.
But it was fun doing the flight simulator. I did that about once a month, then I finally got the hang of it. But it was like being a real pilot with the joystick, and you had to
Right,
watch the screen for the way if you knew you were level and stuff like that.
I bet they were glad you went back to doing art instead of flying a plane.
That's right. I did get to fly one plane in basic training,
Wow.
after basic training, when I was at Parent Air Force Base. We got to fly a plane. And the major taught us how to fly it and how to put the wheel down and up and keep it level and all that kind of things. And that was quite an experience. Then he told me to play a trick on the guys. He said to keep going down and up with the wheel back and forth, and they all got a little seasick on the plane a little bit. But it was fun, and then they all laughed afterwards. It wasn't for too long a time.
Right.
So
But the big thing was your art,
that's right. That was the big thing.
and that's what you have now.
And I have now, and it helped me with all that discipline to be a better artist today.
And what medium do you work in?
Well, now I work in cut paper. I work in cut paper, and I've got that work in galleries in different places in Massachusetts and here in Wolfeboro.
Okay.
If it's okay to say, the Blue Shutter Gallery. And I got into painted sculptures, which I have at the Khaled Gallery and the Jackson Brothers Gallery on Lerner Street. So I've gotten my works around, and they've sold and everything.
Well,
But
good.
it all began with good discipline and good training in art school and everything like that in
Wow.
the Air Force.
And you were always interested in art even before you joined the Air Force?
Even before I joined the Air Force. I did my first artwork at Trapphagen in grammar school, and 6th grade I remember cutting out paper for the bulletin boards and stuff like that,
Wow.
and pinning it up because you didn't have glue in those days, and you had to staple it up, and I had to cut out each letter. And my science teacher encouraged me to do different seasons, like winter, spring, summer, and fall. And so that was my first introduction to really cut paper. That was the only thing I had in those days, construction paper.
Uh-huh. Right, yeah.
And I had to cut it out with little scissors and pin it up and make it look good. And it had to be neat and clean, too,
Yeah.
and precise and very graphic.
Because not many young people know what they really want to do in life.
That's right.
And you decided that at a young
Yeah.
age.
And it's always sustained me. Doing artwork has always been a very good thing for me. And it's made me a more spiritual person, a more complete person. And it's all I ever needed. I never, other than my wife and like that and being married, I never needed anything else to stimulate me mentally, like some kids,
Did you get married in the Air Force?
No, I got married later on, many
Okay.
years later after I got out of the Air Force. So,
Wow.
yeah. But it was an experience of a lifetime being in the Air Force. I'll never forget it. It's been, actually this month it's been 50 years, almost 50 years since I flew down to basic training, October 31st,
Halloween.
1968, and now it's 2018, coming up, Halloween, almost 50, just about 50 years.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And it was, like I said, it was an adventure of a lifetime, and it's lasted me all this time. You don't forget your time in the service.
No, you don't.
And
You
the
don't.
people that you worked with, and I was just very fortunate.
You always remember your service number, too.
Right, 118-416.
903-6304.
Right.
These are things you never forget.
That's
Really. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being. Now, when did you join the American Legion?
American Legion, I joined, we came up here in 1994. I think I joined in 1995, 1996. So I've been with the American Legion for almost 20 years, about 20 years, close to 20 years.
Wow.
That's how long I've been in.
You've seen a lot of changes with it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
All for the better. A lot of different commanders, but they were all very down to earth, too.
Yeah. 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 And I know you participate.
On march and all the parades. I never liked. I love a good parade with marching music.
Yeah. And it's nice when people acknowledge that,
Yeah, they're always applauding and when they're walking down the street, marching down the street on 4th of July, Memorial Day, and thank you for your service and everything.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's a great country. It has to be kept going.
It does. It really
And
does.
It has to always be live in the sunlight of freedom.
Yes, I agree. I agree, and I thank you for being a member of, almost a founding father here in Wolfeboro of the American Legion.
Sort of like, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not many people who enjoy what they're doing in their life,
Right.
as far as a job or
Yeah.
work.
That's true. I do enjoy it very much, and it's emotionally satisfying, spiritually satisfying, and I enjoy expressing myself in a positive way through my art.
That's wonderful. Kind of wish you brought a couple of small pieces.
Yeah,
with
I
you.
didn't think I would be able to show those. So
Well, that's all right. But they're around town.
they're around town. Yeah,
We'll take a look.
right.
Well, thank
That'll
you
be great.
again.
All right, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
This is really a
I feel like
pleasure.
a celebrity.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure.
Thank you.
And again, I thank you for your service, and I thank you for being in the American Legion with us.
All right.
You know.
It's good. It's all good.
So that's it for this version of Veterans on the Front Porch. We hope you enjoyed it. And Bob, I thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you.